Hey everyone, welcome back to BrowncoatNerd. Today we're going to be looking at the Sig Sauer P220. This is a double action, single action 45 ACP. It does have a decocker. It holds 8 plus 1 rounds. The earlier models did hold a few less rounds. They had different mags. This particular example, I believe, was made in 2003. One of the interesting things about this gun, I believe this is the first commercially available firearm that actually used the slide as the locking surface rather than having lugs milled in here. So found that pretty interesting. I did pick this up back in October of 2024, so I've had it for a little while. I believe my round count is roughly around like 250 rounds. Taking this out, it's really easy just to shoot it a whole bunch at the shooting range, even though it has a single stack mag. It's just a really nice shooter. Do want to thank my buddy Clint, who I traded this from. So, yes, this was not a online purchase from one of the big retailers of surplus like I normally do. This was a private trade. But I still wanted to do a video on it, just in case anyone has been curious about these. Give you a little bit of information. We'll kind of do the Cliff Notes version, going over the history. There is a ton of great videos out there going over the history of these guns, how they were developed. Surprise, surprise, Forgotten Weapons has a really good videos, and he has several prototypes, so you can kind of see the evolution before they got to the final design. So that was pretty interesting. So this gun was produced originally in 1975 by Sig, no Sauer yet, in Switzerland. They designed it to replace their Sig P210, and the military or police version of this gun was called the P75. Now, originally, this gun was designed for 9mm or 9x19. However, nowadays, at least specifically in the US, the most common caliber you will find them in is 45 ACP. But they did make them in a range of calibers, like I said, 9x19. 7.65 by 21, 9mm Steyr, 38 Super, 10mm, 45 ACP, and they did have a 22 LR conversion kit, so I guess you could include that as well. This gun proved to be pretty popular, and Sig decided they wanted to sell it for the commercial market as well as other government contracts. However, being based in Switzerland, they were not able to do that. So they did join with a German company called Sauer and Son. And that's when they gave birth to the name Sig Sauer. And that's when they started to produce them for, kind of the global market. Now, the early ones that we got in the US, there was no Sig USA in existence yet. I know some of the early ones were imported by Browning, and they were put under the BDA name, which they've imported, I think, several different guns under the Browning name and just relabeled them BDA. One of the Beretta Cheetahs was brought in that way as well. So we did get early imports. Now, the earlier versions did not have your traditional magazine release. It was a heel-style mag release. Like I said, they had different mags. There's several other small changes as well. And then once Sig Sauer USA began, or rather more specifically Sig Arms Incorporated, they started importing the parts. They were not producing them completely in the US. It was kind of a phased-in program. So originally they would be importing the German-made parts, and they would just simply be assembled in the US. So going over that, if you get one, especially one of these older P220s, it can be made in several different countries. You can get ones that were made in Switzerland. Those aren't the most common. You will get ones that were made in West Germany before unification. I would love to get one of those models. You will get some that were made in Germany, so still kind of native to its original roots. You will get some that will say made in Germany, but were actually assembled in the US, and this is an example of that. I'll go over how to determine that in just a second. And then once the U.S. started to pick up manufacturing, I don't believe the U.S. ever made any of the stamped slides. This has a stamped metal slide, and they would later switch to a milled slide. And real quick too, all of these guns are empty. So later we would switch to this milled slide. And the interesting about this, once they started doing this, the very first ones, this is a 226. Got several videos on this. But the slide will be marked as made in the US, but the frame is made in Germany. So it's kind of a hybrid. Once again, fully assembled in the US. But some of the parts were made in Germany. This one here, all of the parts were made in Germany, but it was assembled in the US. And the way to determine that, well, first of all, it will say made in Germany. However, the ones that were assembled in Germany will have German or European proof marks, either on the desk cover or on the bottom of the slide here, or on both. So if you have one that says made in Germany, it is absent of any of those marks. The parts were made in Germany, however, the gun was assembled in the US. So once I got my 226 here, which is the 226 double action Kellerman with E2 grips. That one was originally in 40. It's currently in 357 Sig. I very quickly realized I absolutely loved this model of firearm. And I kind of been wanting to get some more. Not necessarily specifically the 220. Wouldn't mind a 229. And then I discovered my buddy had one. We discussed a trade. I'll go over what I traded this for later. There might be some controversy on that. I'm happy with the trade. He got 2 firearms. I didn't have 1 firearm that was worth the value of this. And I had 2 that I was willing to let go. So, anyways. Completely lost my train of thought there. This gun has proven to be really good. Like I said, I believe I have around 250 rounds. Super, super easy to shoot. I've had 0 malfunctions. One issue I did have is the mag catch. Like if you release the mag and go to put it in, you can slam it in, which I kind of hate doing. Or you can just push the mag release in and it will lock in there just fine. Like I said, it functions perfectly fine. I was aware of that when I traded for this. And I kind of feel like, and I've yet to do this, I've got so many other projects going on. If, hopefully, I change out that mag release button, maybe there's a burr on there or something, that will fix it. If you have any ideas what it might be or agree with me, let me know. But those mag release buttons are pretty darn cheap, so it's not too expensive. This did at one point have night sights. When it is completely dark, they ever so faintly glow. But they're pretty much dead. So that is one thing I plan on doing with this is replacing the night sights. I'm not really using this as a carry or home defense gun. This is something simply for my collection. But I wouldn't mind having some nice night sights on there. I'm probably also going to change out these grips for the Sig G10 grips. I'll probably actually buy the Hogue version. Hogue makes them for Sig. You can buy them straight from Hogue. A little bit cheaper. They just don't say Sig on the grips. I can live with that. But I'll probably update those grips and then call it a day with this guy. So it does have pretty good amount of wear. The guy I got this from was not the original owner. We suspect it probably belonged to a police officer just from the amount of wear. Right there, it's got quite a bit. The rest of it, yeah, it's got wear, but nothing real bad, just that spot there. And I kind of contemplated maybe, wearing it on his holster. Maybe it was the seatbelt buckle or something there, just constantly rubbing. But it's rubbed that away pretty good. One of the things to be aware of these with the sheet metal slides, you are going to need to replace this pin here. I think they said might have been every 10,000 rounds. With me buying this used, I have no clue when that pin was last replaced. I do eventually plan on doing that just to play it on the safe side. They're not very expensive. I've watched videos on it. It doesn't look too difficult. But that is one of the ways you can easily spot this as being a stamp slide. You'll notice there is no extractor. It is internal on this one. On the milled slide versions, we do have an external extractor. So that's one way to tell. The front of the slide also kind of has this flat section there. Where on the milled ones, it will not. It'll just be kind of a little smooth hump there. And then we got the breech face back here. They needed to add, I guess, a sturdy piece of metal since this is just stamped. So you can kind of see that little cutout. And then, of course, the milled slide's milled, so you do not need that. So just some of the ways to spot out the differences. Is milled slide better over the stamped slide? I mean, obviously it's going to be stronger. You don't have to worry about replacing that pin every so often. It is going to add a little bit of weight, which some people might complain about. The gun's not very heavy to begin with. Also, a little more weight might help reduce some of the recoil, so give and take with that one. Me personally, I really like the aesthetics of the stamped slide. Another thing is this little kind of lightning cut right there is ever so slightly different on the milled one. Real minor. And that might just be a difference between the 220 and the 226. But aesthetically, I just really like the stamp slide, especially on the 220. Is kind of the original of these 220 series. Just kind of Cold War iconic to me. If I were to get something that I was going to be using as a carry gun or home defense, I probably would prefer to get the milled slide. Also, with the milled slide, I don't know when, but they do have the option for the dust cover rail, whereas all the stamp slide ones, you're just going to have the older traditional smooth dust cover, which once again, for this just being a piece of my collection, I actually did not want that rail. I don't plan on attaching anything. To me, I think they look a lot better without it, and if you're not going to use it, why bother getting one? And once again, going back to that kind of Cold War era vibe. There are some magazine options from Sig for this. Like I said, this is an 8-round magazine. I did find a 10-round mag that they offer. So you get an extra 2 rounds. It looks, in my opinion, rather flippin' hideous with that mag in there. And this little plastic piece is a sleeve. I don't think removing that makes it look any better at all. And it's only 2 extra rounds. And I am actually having an issue with this one, as when I load it up, I can only get it to 9 rounds. So I don't know if it's this mag or what. And I've tried several different brands of 45 too. So it's a pretty big extension, and in this one I'm only getting an extra round, so that's kind of a bummer. I was kind of hoping to grab this just to have an extra mag, as it only came with the single mag. Plus, you know, for the range, an extra 2 rounds, thought it would be kind of nice. So, still need to play around with that. I'm sure Pro Mag's probably got some drum mags out there or something for this, which I would not recommend getting. So, am I happy I added this to my collection? Abso-freaking-lutely. You know, I enjoy shooting 32 ACP, and it's always surprised me how fun I find shooting 32 ACP at the range is. 45 is the same way. And I've only got the one RIA 1911 in 45, so it was nice to add something else. Yeah, I kind of would have mind having something with higher capacity, getting like some double stack 45. I know Sig did offer one for a while. However, once again, like I said, going back, this is just a piece for my collection, and the 220 is just a very classic, iconic example of, you know, handguns that were around during the Cold War. So, with this particular one, I'm very happy. What could have made it better? Night sights that were still functioning, maybe. However, this is a pretty old gun, so I'm not surprised at that. Wouldn't have minded getting one that said made in West Germany. I think that would have been pretty cool. So I'm still happy this one says made in Germany, even though it's assembled in the US. But the key thing is I kind of wanted that stamped slide. Also, I like to add variations in my collection. As of right now, the only other Sig P220 series I have is this 226. And it's got the milled slide, so, you know, change it up some. And this guy is still my nightstand gun. So, got the rail on that. Normally have a Surefire TLR1, I think it is. So, yes. So I'm sure some of you might be curious what left my collection that I traded this for. So, I was kind of surprised I had two handguns, and I actually didn't even have these in my collection for that long. You can go back and look at my videos and find that the reviews on these aren't from that long ago. But the Beretta M1951, I had been wanting one for a while. Got one, is a pretty good example. Shot it. I was happy with it. As happy as you can be with the Beretta M1951. The sights aren't the greatest. But once again, it's a piece for my collection. Wasn't expecting anything exceptional there. It was fairly accurate, but I did hate how long the grip section here was. It was a single stack, so very, very slim. Much slimmer than this. But it was just very kind of long in the grip. It was a little uncomfortable for me. The safety, it had a slide bolt safety, which I thought was pretty cool and unique. But I also have a Beretta 92S. And honestly, if I'm like wanting to shoot a 9mm Beretta in my collection, like every time I kept going back to my 92S that I've had forever. So I was just kind of like, okay, you know what? My collection's getting a little carried away. I need to thin it out some. So I decided the M1951 can go, even though it was a nice example and I just got it not that long ago. And then another one, which I had gotten a killer deal on, and I've been wanting for a long time, and I was kind of shocked that I got it, and I was just kind of like, It was my VZ82. I got a really good clean example from AIM Surplus. They actually sold it as an X grade, and you can go back and watch my video on that, and I was more than happy to get the discount. I think it was like $100 cheaper to get the X grade. And as far as CZ82 Surplus handguns go, it was in pretty damn good shape. Like, it wasn't even a fair. I would have rated that to good to very good condition. It had some chipping on the finish, but it was not bad at all. Took that out, shot it. It was a great gun. Very accurate. I've had a CZ83 for several years. That one's chambered in 380. And that one's actually kind of been in and out of my collection a few times, so it's one that's in my collection. I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. And just shooting the CZ83, shooting the CZ82, and then shooting my Bulgarian Makarov, the 82 is just kind of getting thrown to the back seat. I love the 83. It's very accurate. I did kind of a head-to-head comparison between the Makarov and the 82. And oddly enough, I kind of felt like the Makarov was just a little bit more accurate. And those 82s have a polygonal barrel. They were kind of designed for a specific loading of 9x18. So that might be affecting the accuracy. But with those guns, I just realized that both the 1951 and the 82 could leave my collection. I did not feel that either one of those was a fair trade for a Sig P220. He was wanting to trade this. I was wanting to add something new to my collection. I was bored with those two. So I was like, hey, that's what I traded. I traded both the Beretta M1951 and the CZ82 for this. He was happy with it, which also makes me happy. Like, he's getting into surplus collecting. And as soon as he saw those two guns, he fell in love, I felt like. So I was very happy with that. He did throw in some boxes of ammo, so it kind of sweetened the deal a little bit. I got a box of cheap steel case 45 ACP, and then a box of 7.5 Swiss. It's not GP11, but it's PPU, so I'll take it. So I was happy with the trade. And this gun, guys, it's really freaking fun to shoot. I absolutely love this. To the point, I do kind of want to get a newer one with the milled slide and the rail. I'd have to try to find the double stack model, which I think those go for quite a bit of a premium since Sig has discontinued them. Shooting the 1911 that I have, that was in 45. Yeah, it was fun. Sorry for bumping the camera. But taking this out and shooting 45 in this, I don't know why, but it was just much more enjoyable. I don't know, maybe I'll have to do a comparison between this and the RA 1911. I feel like this is probably going to be more accurate, which shouldn't be a surprise, I guess. But so yeah, that is my video on the P220. Real quick, one thing I forgot, I do want to point out, which I found interesting. This may have had a piece changed on it. Pretty much all the examples I've seen that say made in Germany with the stamp slide, but were actually assembled here in the US, do not have this newer style takedown lever. The newer ones kind of have like this little nub added on there. So I do not know if this was like towards the very tail end of the all German parts manufacturing and that piece came along. Because I always assumed this style here was the US made version. This could have been something that was added by the previous owner. However, that's kind of a weird piece to upgrade. It doesn't seem that important to me. It's the takedown lever. It's not the, slide release or decocker or anything like that. But maybe it's just an easy piece to change out and he wanted to do it. I don't know. So, did want to point that out real quick. Also, I tried looking this up, man. I am so sorry, guys. I hope you can find the video. There's a YouTuber out there. I came across this video a while back on the P220. And he talks about how he wanted to get it because he watched the movie Abyss. And the Navy SEALs in that used the P220. So he kind of goes down this journey of hunting down that specific, batch run. The stamp slides did have some variations. This is kind of the rounder version. The one that he was looking for is kind of a little more angular right on that curve section there. And then he ended up getting the one he got. There's the new Abyss came out like on a 4K or Blu-ray or whatever. And he was actually able to see the serial number on the one they used in the movie. And the one that he got, I think, was like either 5 or 20 digits away from the one that was used in the movie. Which I thought was awesome. Like, it made me so happy watching that. I was like, hell yeah, dude, that is awesome. And I tried finding it again on YouTube, and I, for the life of me, cannot find that video. I wanted to give him a mention and a shout out. But just know that video is floating around out there somewhere. And if you're like a sci-fi nerd like me, plus a gun nerd, that was a really cool, fun video. I was really happy that dude was able to find that example. So that is it, guys. That's all I've got to show for the P220. If you like this video, please consider liking and subscribing. Don't forget to check me out on Rumble as well as Instagram. And of course, as always, stay safe and stay shiny.